Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Spain, a borrowed rope ends 15 meters above the floor. In Wales, the mountain shuts its only door overnight. And in Italy, a heart gives out 800 meters down. As always, viewer discretion is advised. This is Cavern Depths. The first story begins now, and it starts the way they all do, with a plan. On May 17, 2026, Irene Salas clipped her descender at the top of the 4th pitch of Sima Gesm, one of the deepest cave systems in Spain, a cold ladder of shafts dropping over a kilometer through the Sierra de las Nieves. The stone there eats light. It has been eating it for 1,000,000 years. She was riding a rig another club had left in place, a courtesy between teams, with a laminated rig list clipped to the first anchor. Pitch 4, 65 meters of rope. Irene was 27, a Malaga caver who had logged 500 pitches before her 25th birthday, and who still phoned her father from the trailhead before every cave, a promise as old as her first harness. Her habit was the rope end band, a red rubber marker she rolled 10 meters from the bottom of every rope she rigged, every trip, so the end could never arrive unannounced. Ropes you rig yourself carry your habits. Borrowed ropes carry somebody else's. The rig list was tidy, laminated, confident. What she didn't know, 2 bags had been swapped on the surface a season ago, and the rope on pitch 4 was the 45-meter spare, and nobody had ever ridden it to the bottom. The first 3 pitches ran like a metronome, the rack hissing, drips clattering far below her boots, spring air moving up the shaft like a slow tide. The 4th pitch was the big one, 60 meters of clean hang. She checked her light, checked her backup, and stepped over the lip on schedule, unhurried, a woman doing a thing she had done 500 times. What she didn't know, the rope below her ran out 15 meters above the floor, and the end of it carried no knot. At 30 meters down, that is when the list stopped being true, because the laminated number had quietly failed her at the surface, and the rope in her lamp beam ended in a bare, unknotted tail swinging 15 meters above the stones. She saw it 3 meters below her boots, a frayed white tip turning slowly in the beam. No band, no knot, no floor. Here is what you need to understand about abseiling past the end of a rope. It is not a fall you feel coming. It is a fall that begins the instant the last centimeter leaves your descender. The device cannot hold what is no longer inside it, and at that point, your rope is history you already used. So what do, hanging on borrowed rope, when the bottom of it hangs in the air? You stop descending, instantly. And this is where a caver's hands either know the drill or they do not. Panic wanted 1 more meter of speed. The list had failed. The end was bare. The dark kept pulling. Because this is the arithmetic of a short rope. 3 meters of tail is 4 seconds of inattention, and a descender travels a meter a second when the fear gets into the brake hand. Watch 500 pitches earn their keep. Irene locked her descender off hard, wrapped the tail twice around her thigh, and hung still until her breathing slowed from sprint to walk. Then she tied the knot the rope should have carried, clipped her ascenders on, and turned her longest abseil into a 40-meter climb back the way she came. Put yourself on that rope for 1 minute of it. A bare tail turning under your boots, a main light already amber on its battery, and the arithmetic of 40 meters of prusiked on arms that have been caving since dawn. 10 meters up, her main light died on schedule, and she climbed the last 30 on the backup, a white coin of beam and the sound of her own slings creaking. How far is 40 meters on your empty arms? Exactly as far as the dark decides it is. Her hand found the pitch head bolt at 11 minutes past the hour, 40 minutes after the end of the rope had turned in her lamp. She sat at the anchor, ate a frozen chocolate bar, wrote, "Short, 45 meters, no knot," across the laminated list in grease pencil, and rigged her own rope home. The club inquiry recorded a caver stopped 3 meters from an unknotted rope end at pitch 4. a laminated list that had silently failed her, and a bag swap nobody had logged. Every fixed rope in the system was pulled and remeasured within a month, and the rule went regional. The list is a rumor, the knot is a fact. One of the deepest caves in Spain still drops its cold kilometer through the Sierra de las Nieves. Borrowed ropes carry somebody else's habits, Irene tells her club now, and her red bands go on every rope she touches. The report recorded 40 meters reclimbed on a dying light. She survived all 40 of them. You're watching Cavern Depths, and this is the second story of the night. On March 14th, 2026, Caris Vaughan and Rhys Powell slid into the entrance crawl of Daren Cilau, the longest and meanest entrance series in Britain. 517 meters of cold, flat-out squeeze, guarding some of the finest chambers under Wales. The crawl is the price of admission, and you pay it in bruises. The plan was 90 minutes of crawling to an overnight camp at the Hard Rock Cafe, the famous underground bivouac, and a survey leg the next day. Caris was 44, a Crickhowl caver who had dug on the Llangattock boulder piles for 20 years, the kind of woman who patted the first stone of every pile like an old dog before she went through it. Rhys was 31, a quarry engineer's son who had promised his wife he would always camp rather than rush a crawl when he was tired, and who kept a spare stove in his tackle bag for whoever forgot theirs. Her habit was the ledger, a waterproof notebook where she logged every creak in the boulders, every new pebble on the floor, every trip, because stones that are talking are stones that are thinking. The vice, the pinch halfway through them, had said nothing new in 9 years. The forecast was ordinary, and the hillside was soaked from a wet fortnight. What they didn't know, 2 weeks of Welsh rain had been working through the mountain above the choke, greasing joints that had held their breath since the ledger began. The entrance series went as it always goes, elbows scraping, helmets ticking on the roof, the long, cold hour of it, then the choke, then the grand dark of the big passages beyond. They made camp by 8, on schedule, brews on, boots off. What she didn't know, the ledger had just recorded its last quiet page, and the mountain was about to speak while they slept. At 2 in the morning, that is when the mountain cleared its throat, because the soaked joints above the vice had finally failed, and a sound like a lorry tipping slate rolled down the passages and settled into their sleeping bags. They lay still in the dark and counted the echoes. Then they walked back to the choke with their answer already half known, and the vice was gone, and in its place sat a boulder the size of a chest freezer. Here is what you need to understand about a boulder choke. It is not a wall, it is a conversation between 1,000 stones, paused mid-sentence. Rain restarts the sentence within 12 hours, you do not get a vote on the grammar, and the exit you crawled in through is only ever borrowed. So what do you do when the mountain closes the only door? You stop pulling at it. A choke that has just moved is a choke still deciding, and this is where digging too early buries people. Panic scratched at the new boulder anyway. The way out had failed. The stone would not move. The cold sat down beside them. Because this is the arithmetic of being sealed in. They had food for 2 days, gas for 3, and a call-out that would not raise the alarm for 18 more hours. Watch 20 years of choke ledgers become a rescue plan. Caris did not dig. She wrote, time of collapse, size of the fall, which joints had gone, and where the draught still whistled through a gap 40 centimeters wide, because a draught is a promise that a route exists. Then they went back to camp, banked the stove, and rationed the brews, 2 people spending warmth as carefully as you spend money. Put yourself in that camp for 1 hour of it. A mountain between you and daylight, a notebook that says the stones may not have finished, and the arithmetic of 18 hours before anyone on the surface even reaches for a phone. What do you spend the hours on? They spent them sleeping, because sleep is the cheapest fuel there is. The call-out tripped at 6 the next evening, and the digging teams came up the hill in the rain, 40 cavers rotating in threes at the cold face of the choke. They followed the draught and Karas's shouted ledger through the boulders, shoring as they went, and 28 hours after the fall, the last stone rolled clear, and a hand in a wet glove reached through and took hers. The rescue report recorded 2 cavers trapped 28 hours behind a shifted choke, an intact camp, and a textbook wait. No digging from the inside, warmth banked, the draft mapped for the teams before they ever arrived. The vice is shored with steel now, and the choke ledger is a club document with her name on the cover. The longest entrance crawl in Britain still charges its 517 meters of bruises. A choke is a conversation, Caris tells the diggers now, and the ledger listens so you do not have to guess. The report recorded 28 hours behind the stones. Both cavers walked out warm.
You're watching Cavern Depths, and tonight's final story is the one they still talk about. On January 24th, 2026, Enzo Barsotti walked into the mountain door of the Antro del Corchia, one of the deepest cave systems in Italy. 70 kilometers of cold marble passage wound through the Alpi Apuane like thread through a sculpture. Cavers here do not say they enter the mountain, they say the mountain lets you in. He was leading a 2-man survey camp, 3 days at depth, mapping a new lead off the old river galleries, 800 meters below the winter sun. Enzo was 47, a Lucca stonemason who had mapped Corchia's passages for 25 years. A barrel of a man whose survey sheets hung framed in the club hut, drawn with a mason's patience and his daughter's colored pencils. His habit was the pencil ritual: sharpen 2, carry 3, every trip, and finish every sheet before sleep, because a half-drawn passage, he liked to say, is a promise you have not kept yet. His partner Luca carried the instruments. Enzo drew. What they didn't know: for a month, the mountain had been asking him quiet questions on the climbs, a breathlessness he had filed under age, a tightness he had promised his wife was nothing. The first 2 days ran like craft, the tape hissing out along marble walls, drips ticking into pools, boots scraping marble, ladders creaking, the pencil whispering across waterproof paper, sheet after sheet finished before sleep. On the 3rd morning, they packed the camp and started out, on schedule. 4 hours of galleries and pitches between them and daylight. What he didn't know: the month of quiet questions had been the mountain counting down. An hour into the climb out, that is, when his body called in the debt. Because the tightness he had filed under age had finally failed him properly, and a fist closed inside his chest 800 meters from the sky. He sat down on a marble ledge, very carefully, like a man setting down glass. He said one word, and the word was Luca. Here is what you need to understand about a heart attack at depth. The injury is the same one you would suffer in your kitchen. The distance is the disease. A city gives you a defibrillator in 8 minutes. A cave at 800 meters gives you a doctor in 14 hours. And the mountain does not hurry for anybody. So what do you do when the emergency is a place no ambulance can reach? You spend your partner. And this is where 2-man camps pay their cruel arithmetic. The man who runs for help leaves the man who needs it alone. Panic offered to carry him out. The chest had failed. The exit was 5 hours away. The maths would not move. Because this is the arithmetic of depth. Luca alone could reach the surface in 4 hours. The tunnel phone could raise 60 rescuers within 1 hour more, and none of it made the first 14 hours any shorter. Watch a stonemason spend his last hours like a craftsman. They wrapped him in both sleeping bags against the 8-degree cold, stove lit, water close. Then Enzo sent Luca for the surface with the survey bag, because the sheets were finished, and a promise kept is a promise kept. Luca ran the galleries alone, 4 hours of ladders and pitches with his friend's handwriting on his back. To the tunnel phone, and to the words that empty every rescue bed in Tuscany. Caver down at depth, cardiac. Put yourself on that marble ledge for 1 hour of it. A stove hissing beside you, a mountain of stone between your chest and every hospital on Earth. And the arithmetic of 14 hours arriving in a place where you counted your life in finished sheets. What would you think about?
He thought about colors, he told the first medic. Which pencil the new gallery deserved. The CNSAS reached him in 12 hours, not 14. 60 rescuers relaying oxygen and a doctor down the pitches through the night. The doctor reached the ledge at dawn and found the stove still warm, the water still close, and Enzo gone, quietly, in the 9th hour, wrapped in 2 sleeping bags with a sharpened pencil in his chest pocket. The inquest recorded a cardiac death at 800 meters of depth. A 2-man protocol followed to the letter, and a carry-out of 3 days that the volunteers still speak of quietly. The longest stretcher carry in the club's history, hand over hand up every pitch he had mapped. No fault was found with anyone, including the heart. One of the deepest caves in Italy still winds its 70 kilometers of marble under the Apuane. Finish the sheet before you sleep, his club teaches now, and get the quiet questions checked. The report recorded that Enzo died at depth with his survey complete. The club inked his last sheet that spring, and the new gallery is drawn in his daughter's blue.